Chapter 2. Bob Henderson at the Hurricane Inn. The usually cheerful Bob Henderson sat alone in his room at the Hurricane bed and breakfast in a rare state of melancholy. Yes, there were advantages to defeating the organization, to working on one's own terms and on one's own standards. Yes, there was merit in winning online contests and getting one's picture taken with presidents and senators and celebrities. Yes, there was merit in outwitting the hierarchy. Bob Henderson had seen a lot of good men eat the shit of petty administrators. Bob Henderson never had to eat shit. That was the best part of beating the system. But Bob Henderson once more felt left out. The FBI, in conjunction with several other federal agencies and dozens of state and local agencies, was about to launch the biggest dragnet in U.S. history. From Tennessee to Texas, over 5,000 suspects, most of them Mexican nationals, were to be rounded up in a 24-hour period. Just about every able-bodied agent not involved with counterterrorism, counter-espionage, ongoing trials, and a few prioritized investigations would be sent to hotels in Southland. But no one invited Bob. Headquarters was certain that the Mexican alliance was behind the original Houston biological attacks 2 years ago, and the feds had sent thousands of agents to Texas to round up anyone tied to the cartels. But after those roundups, there was the Waller County chlorine gas attack. No doubt the cartel's way of flipping off the feds. Then there was the Houston mail attack, followed by the chemical attack in downtown Memphis in broad daylight. This was followed by dozens of mysterious cases of exotic diseases that mostly afflicted court employees. Finally, there was the wayward sarin attack, launched with a stolen plane from Texas. Soon, the family, friends, and associates of anyone else who received a text, email, or phone call from members of the Mexican Alliance would have their day of reckoning. But it took a lot of planning to muster the forces and book reservations using phony corporations. As it was, a lot of rookies would be sleeping at campgrounds and RV parks. Today was October 1st, and presumably hurricane season was over. It would be a cosmic mess to move thousands of feds into a hurricane or an evacuation area. It looked like the Bureau would enjoy blue skies on their big day. Some administrator called this the FBI's D-Day. Bob Henderson could not stay home for D-Day. He had frequent flyer miles to cover his puddle jumpers, and he had coupons for his rental car. But he had to pay for his room at the Hurricane Bed and Breakfast located out of Cleveland, Mississippi, out of his own pocket. The Hurricane Bed and Breakfast was the only lodging Stella could find for her boss. Acme Tools, Ace Materials, Proficient Technologies, and a dozen other facade companies filled up every available hotel room and campground in 9 states with federal agents and civilian support personnel. That left the Hurricane Bed and Breakfast. Bob found the Red Cross motif in the common area a bit contrived. The crazy woman behind the counter in her raincoat and galoshes frightened Bob ever so slightly, and Bob did not look forward to sitting on milk crates and eating MREs for breakfast. Bob had hoped to land the Camille room, but unfortunately that was the only room currently taken. So he settled for the Katrina room, and he thought that perhaps the room was contributing to his low spirits. Bob had always taken both politicians and journalists with a grain of salt. He thought, as a lot of Americans thought, that elected officials and reporters were vain fools, but down deep they were noble people who could be counted on in times of crisis. Venial sins aplenty, mortal sins rarely. That all changed with Hurricane Katrina. Maybe it had been brewing beforehand, but Katrina was the tipping point of hyper politics. At that time, everything, including natural disasters, was politicized. Bob could remember watching as natural disasters, earthquakes, floods, blizzards, and tornadoes were reported as tragic events interspersed with acts of heroism. The whole country, the whole world would pool together, and the stature and dignity of politicians and reporters would soar. Not so Katrina. The press led a full court assault even before the skies cleared. Racism innuendo, insinuations that the White House was committing genocide, fingers pointing blame at the president and the president's appointees. Other fingers pointed to the governor, and other fingers pointed to the mayor. Oil companies, executives, the levee authority, the Army Corps of Engineers, on and on and on. Katrina would provide the forum for the press to bitterly promote their existing political grudges. Politicians would tumble a bit in the public's eye, but journalists hit the ground harder. Journalism did not die, but part of the American spirit did. The press would transition from dashing young hero to grouchy old bastard with bad teeth and faulty memories. Now, the decor of Bob Henderson's room reflected Katrina's zeitgeist. The walls were packed with photos that downplayed heroism, but emphasized looters, refugees, floating bodies, and piles of garbage. The carpet displayed an aerial photograph of the unused school buses. The bed comforter depicted scenes from the Superdome, and the sheets and pillowcases paid homage to the unique environmental challenges that plagued the city morgue following the prolonged loss of electricity and running water. Bob examined the hanging photographs up close. On the top frame of a photo of a steaming parking lot full of body bags and people in hazmat suits, there was a small post-it memo. If you take this photograph home with you, we will bill your credit card $4,995. Bob recoiled in horror. That photo was readily available on the internet, and a do-it-yourself frame could be had for $5. He did not find the 1,000-fold markup amusing. Every photo, every trinket had a price tag and a note attached to it. They were all priced differently, but they were all priced exorbitantly. What if they tried to say that Bob walked off with some of their junk? This place was not quite as comfortable as Bob had hoped it might be. Bob walked down the hall and urinated in the toilet. There was nothing unusual about the bathroom except the synthesizers that simulated whistling wind and tidal waves when the toilet was flushed. Bob shuffled back to his room and settled into a small corner desk that allowed him a terrific view of what seemed to be a salvage yard. Bob placed a new handheld cell on the desk. He had purchased it for just one purpose, and he had never used it before. This model came with an encryption feature that allowed one to keep voice notes with excellent privacy. If the cell happened to fall into the hands of Naval Intelligence or NSA, and they had a code breaker with nothing to do, he might crack the encryption in a couple of days. The average thief would never break the code. Bob started the encryption and then pressed record. He took a sip of bottled water and began. I finally committed adultery. Finally. Part of me is asking, what took you so long? And yet, part of me is uncomfortable. Public opinion does mean something to me. It means a lot to me. I hold a begrudging respect for the person who says, I don't give a damn what anyone thinks, and then acts accordingly. I do care what other people think. I care what people say about me. I need a certain amount of approval. Unfortunately, I know how harshly the court of public opinion treats adulterers. Sad, but we judge adulterers more severely than we judge abusers and drug addicts and alcoholics. And that is to say nothing about verbal cruelty and neglect and rudeness and coldness, especially the coldness. I saw a movie where a rogue cop, how did it happen that every cop on the silver screen becomes a rogue cop? What's wrong with cops who obey the law? Cops who use society's institutions in their prescribed manner. But enough of that. In this movie, the cop murdered people he suspected of organized crime. He was a serial killer. How fucked up is that? What's worse, or almost as bad, maybe worse, he clubbed an FBI agent with a blackjack. And yet, the only moral dilemma the character faced was his adulterous affair. His serial killing and assault of a federal agent was portrayed as heroic. Is this just the wussification of America? Maybe. Maybe that's what it is. In the old days, men did what they had to do. The biology was accepted. Discretion was the better part of valor. Now divorce is rampant, and I don't think women are better off. Look at Bill Clinton. He was a pretty good president. I had my picture taken with him 5 times. What a gracious Southern gentleman. He did a lot for his country, and yet he was starved for physical affection. Starved. Don't mention his wife's name. She was many things, but she was never affectionate. Never. I felt sorry for Bill Clinton. His loneliness, his isolation. This is a man who loved life. He reached out as any lonely man would. Bill Clinton was publicly humiliated by weirdos and petty people. Kenneth Starr's posse was illegally leaking grand jury testimony. Some of Clinton's most vocal critics were catting around themselves. And those nauseating born-againers who get up there and say, "I don't believe in moral relativism," make me vomit. When we first married, Debbie befriended a girl whose husband beat her. Debbie tried to show her that this girl's husband was a scumbag. And what did the girl say? "At least he doesn't cheat on me." Whenever we told that story, someone would say, "I know someone like that." For years, I just said women are stupid and left it at that. But women are judge, jury, and prosecutor in the court of public opinion. They are also the material witnesses. Men are too busy paying bills or trying to please their ladies. In gyno court, adultery is worse than abuse. Yes, there are many reasons to feel neglected. One might be that a man just happened to marry a cold-hearted bitch. Bill Clinton comes to mind, but let's not dump on his wife. There are a lot of women who are focused on everything except the happiness of their husbands. I doubt if any woman ever wanted to make a man happy, but they could at least go through the motions. They could at least pretend. Which brings us to the special circumstance of alcoholism. Alcoholism is cruel because it's chronic. It's constant. 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 Alcoholic. How cute. How euphemistic. "I have a disease." Yes, the disease of coldness. The disease of neglecting your children. The disease of humiliating your daughters so bad that they moved far away and never looked back. My darling daughters, no one should have had a childhood like you had. I won't stop apologizing for your humiliation. I should have done more, but I want you to know that your father also paid a steep price for keeping the family together. Maybe if I had discovered adultery earlier, maybe you both would have had childhoods to remember. Instead, you have childhoods you struggle to forget. I did something usual the other day. I've always been Protestant. My father, Episcopalian, my mother, Presbyterian. I never dabbled in Catholicism. The Reformation was a good thing. But I knew the Catholics have confession. So I walked in and confessed my adultery to a priest. He was kind. He asked me if I planned to sin again, and I said, of course not. He asked more questions, like why he never saw me before. Was I an active Catholic? Was I planning on marital counseling? I hate to lie, especially to a priest, but I made up a story and then got the hell out of there. I went home and said my 3 Our Fathers in the garage. Alcoholics, drunks are the most callous of people. At this point, Bob Henderson's personal cell chirped. It was Judy. He saved his transcription and turned off the cell recorder. He focused entirely on Judy. Hello? I need you. Good news, I'm not that far away. Where exactly? Cleveland, Mississippi. Have to jump around to 3 outposts. Bob Henderson felt a chill at his unuttered falsehood. I have to see you, Bob. I don't ever want to go this long without you. Bob paused before responding. He wanted to savor her words. He could not remember the last time he felt needed. They kept it brief, and Bob bit his tongue about Judy moving to Quantico. He wanted to have his life in order before she moved to Virginia. He had a lot of reflecting to do as to what he would do with Debbie. Divorce was still not a word he liked to say out loud. They signed off, and Bob stretched out on the made bed. The travel had exhausted him. He would eat the peanut butter and jelly sandwiches he had stowed away. He brushed his teeth and urinated and retired early. He knew he'd be facing sleepless nights, and he wanted to rest while rest was still an option.